Right now in South Korea, millions of women are performing a bizarre daily ritual on their smartphones that looks a lot like a funeral for a man who never even existed. You see them scrolling through professional forums and anonymous chat rooms, wailing into the digital void that the dating pool is empty and there are absolutely no marriageable men left on the entire peninsula. It is a total contradiction that would make your head spin. You walk down any street in Seoul and you are practically tripping over men in their 30s, but according to the loudest voices online, these men are ghosts. It is like walking into a massive grocery store, seeing shelves overflowing with food, and then screaming at the manager that there is nothing to eat, because you specifically demanded a diamond-encrusted steak for the price of a candy bar. This is not just a picky dating phase. This is a massive synchronized psychological filter where a huge chunk of the population has decided that if a man doesn't hit a specific elite statistical bracket, he simply isn't a human being worth talking to. They have set their filters so high that they have effectively deleted 80 to 90% of the male population from their reality. We are watching a society treat the search for a life partner like a cold surgical recruitment drive for a job that doesn't have any openings, and the results are exactly as chaotic and tragic as you'd imagine. But why would they actually demand this? Why would someone look at a perfectly normal, hardworking guy and treat him like he's invisible? To understand this, you have to look at how the entire idea of marriage has been stripped of any warmth and turned into a brutal business transaction. In this world, a husband is not a person with a personality or dreams or a kind heart. He is a collection of data points on a spreadsheet. He is his company's logo, his annual salary, and the neighborhood where his apartment is located. Marriage has become the ultimate way to level up in a hyper-competitive game. If you're working a modest job at a small company, you don't look for a partner to build a life with. You look for a man at a top-tier global conglomerate who can act as your personal elevator to a higher social rank. Marrying a guy at a famous tech giant or a government official isn't about love. It's about shedding your old life and being reborn into a higher caste. It is all about the desperate hunger for social weight and the terror of being looked down upon by your friends. In this culture, your wedding is the final report card of your entire youth, and if you don't have a high-status groom to show off, you feel like you failed the exam. People here are so terrified of what their social circle thinks that they would rather stay single forever than marry a man who earns a great living but doesn't have a fancy title. They want a trophy to post on social media, not a human being to share a breakfast table with. So what is the real story behind this obsession with the elite? The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Globally, everyone thinks of this place as a land of giants like Samsung and Hyundai. But inside the country, those giants are actually gated communities. While every woman is holding out for a man in that top 20% of the economy, the actual world they live in is built by the other 80%. There is a massive mismatch between what people want and what the economy actually produces. In places like the United States, about half of the jobs are in large companies. But here, that number is tiny, around 14%. The entire culture is built on a winner-take-all mindset that treats anything less than a gold medal as a total disaster. We have created a world where being average is seen as a moral failure. The most hilarious and sad part is that the very women who are complaining about the lack of elite men are often working in those exact same average companies themselves. They are looking in the mirror, hating what they see, and then turning around and demanding that a prince from a different world come and rescue them from their own reflection. They are rejecting the men who are exactly like them, hoping to jump onto a luxury ship that only has room for a tiny fraction of the passengers. But why does the system keep failing so hard? Why can't people just lower their standards and be happy? It's because the gap between the winners and everyone else has become a canyon that nobody can jump across anymore. There is a toxic idea floating around that if a man didn't make it into a top-tier company, it's because he's lazy or stupid. This ignores the fact that the economy is designed to produce a few winners and a massive army of workers who earn way less. The laws of math don't care about your feelings, but the culture refuses to listen. We have reached a point where people who earn a normal, middle-class wage are openly mocked with nasty labels, being called insects or losers just because their paycheck doesn't have enough zeros. The marriage market has turned into a broken vending machine where everyone is trying to buy a luxury car with a coupon for a bag of chips. It is a complete misalignment of reality and desire. People are demanding a standard of living that the country literally cannot provide for the majority of its citizens, and instead of fixing the demand, they just blame the men for not being rich enough. So what happens when they get exactly what they asked for? What happens when you build a society where only the top 10% are allowed to reproduce? You get a total collapse of empathy and a gender war that looks like something out of a nightmare. Men who fail to meet these impossible standards are being labeled as evolved-out losers who don't deserve a seat at the table. In response, many of these men are just walking away from the game entirely. They are retreating into their own world, spending their money on themselves, and refusing to even look at the marriage market anymore. It's like a demographic suicide pact. The birth rate is the lowest in the entire world, not because people hate kids, but because the entrance fee to start a family has been set higher than what most people will earn in their entire lives. We are seeing a world where the ideal has become so rigid and so fake that the real world is just being thrown in the trash. It's a society of people who would rather be lonely and high status than happy and average. If this keeps going, the future is going to look like a tragic comedy. We are already seeing the beginning of it, a growing group of women in their late 30s and 40s who are still waiting for that young elite lawyer or prosecutor to suddenly appear and recognize their hidden value. They refuse to compromise with reality until it is far too late, and by the time they realize the elite men they were chasing have already moved on, or decided to stay single, the clock has run out. The inevitable outcome is a country full of lonely winners and bitter losers. You're going to see luxury nursing homes filled with people who were too good for a normal husband, and low-cost housing filled with men who were told they were insects for 40 years. The country is turning into a museum of prestige. All the exhibits are beautiful and high status, but there is no one left to inherit the building. It is a slow-motion disaster where everyone is so busy checking their reflection in the mirror that they don't notice they're about to drive off a cliff. The whole thing can be summed up by a single image. Imagine a huge crowd of people standing in a muddy, empty field, clutching expensive VIP first-class tickets and screaming that the train is late. The mockery is that there are no tracks in that field. There was never a train coming. The train is a fantasy that everyone can marry into the top sliver of society. It is a mathematical lie that has been sold as a basic human right. You cannot hold a VIP ticket while standing in the mud and expect the world to build a railroad just for you. These seekers are so blinded by the prestige of their ticket that they don't realize they are standing in the same mud as the men they are laughing at. They are waiting for a miracle to rescue them from their own average lives, refusing to see that an average life is actually a pretty good thing. In the end, they would rather die of thirst in the middle of a desert than drink perfectly good water from a plain plastic cup. It is a masterclass in how humans can choose a prestigious misery over a humble, happy reality, and the bill for that choice is finally coming due. Fuel the truth at Dating in Korea. Support the structure. Stay safe in the lounge.